and welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson, coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and all across the 24/7 Sports Facebook network. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, and come and join us in the chat. A lot to get to here on a Wednesday. We've got a lot to catch up on. We've got a popular criticism of Dabo Swinney that we've had here on the Cover 3 podcast. He ducks it, goes the other way. What does it mean for the Clemson, and what is the fallout on the TCU side as Garrett Riley will be the new offensive coordinator? Here in just a little bit, we got to get into the very latest on Jaden Rashada, as our last prediction that we recorded here on the podcast was that Rashada would not end up at the University of Florida. Latest developments indicate that we are continuing to bend that way. Walker Howard has announced his commitment to Ole Miss after leaving LSU. We've got Cormani McClain to discuss and much, much more. And plus, for like a second, maybe CJ Stroud was coming back. What? No. Common sense wins out. The winners and losers of the NFL draft underclassmen deadline, which is this week. We'll get into that as well. But we want to begin at the University of Michigan, where there's a lot to get to. And before we even try to understand, which we might not, whatever computer access crimes mean, let's talk about the most certain thing that we have. That Jim Harbaugh does appear to be back at Michigan for the 2023 season. Now, to speak Harbaugh is very difficult. So when he says things like, I love the relationships that I have at Michigan, coaches, staff, families, administration, President Santaono, and especially the players and their families, my heart is at the University of Michigan. I once heard a wise man say, don't try to out happy, go blue. He didn't commit to being at Michigan for 2023. But to speak Harbaugh, especially in the wake of Santaono's announcement that I just got off the phone with Coach Harbaugh, and Jim shared with me the great news that he is going to remain the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines. This is fantastic news that I've communicated to our athletic director, Ward Manuel. Jim Harbaugh is going to be back at Michigan for 2023. And while I have not seen any official reporting or any official news, I'm assuming this is coming with a new contract.
I would think so. I mean,
compensation and some changes to, the cuts and the readjusted contract. And as we've gone back and forth, that Jim Harbaugh maybe decided to play a little bit of his leverage that he has here as a two-time Big Ten champion head coach. So where does Michigan come out on the other side of this?
I mean, I think you're right. I don't. There's going to be a new contract, just because if you look at his salary compared to what some of the other Big Ten coaches are making, and he's won the conference the last 2 years, it's not really, comparable. He should be paying more based on that market. But what was interesting to me is like I've been pretty adamant that I thought he was coming back for a while. I thought that unless a team offered him complete control of everything, which NFL teams just don't do anymore, he wasn't going to leave for an NFL gig. But what was the most interesting aspect of all this to me is, read that statement again, Chip. There's a name that isn't in it.
Ward Emanuel.
Yeah.
The athletic director.
Mm-hmm.
He's going straight to the top. He's bypassing his boss.
Yeah, and it's been a few times. I don't think this is the first time Harbaugh has not mentioned his athletic director in these, weird statements that he's made that have said, I'm coming back. And I think that there is partial, if you think back to Jim Harbaugh's time at the NFL, what was the breakdown with San Francisco? It was the relationship with him and his general manager. I feel like there might be something going on between him and Ward Manuel, where, they've been together a long time. Jim Harbaugh, from people I have talked to, say he's not, it's just, it could be difficult to work with Jim Harbaugh. It could be difficult to have Jim Harbaugh work for you for a long period of time, just because he is different. Not bad, just it can get on you. He's a different type of person. And, he's very, very into his football, and just he's got a code, I guess is the best way to put it. And he follows it. But I just wonder if there's some sort of friction forming between him and Ward Manuel. And that has really been maybe the impetus between this the last couple of years of his seemingly return inflated interest in going back to the NFL. And maybe if this power play isn't just about getting a raise, but maybe he's going to be negotiating the raise with.
Interesting take there. I also noticed that Manuel was not in the statement. So you have to assume that Manuel was involved, but maybe not directly involved with him coming back. I think the most obvious factor for him coming back is that he did not get the offer that he wanted from the NFL. And if you're Ward Manuel, we're like, really? Are we going to do this every year, Jim? Because your recruiting should be better. Now, Tom and I could sit on here and debate, should they be top 5 or whatnot, but they absolutely should be top 10 every year based on the fact that they have won the Big Ten back-to-back years. They have gone to the college football playoff back-to-back years, and yet they've missed on some important kids. And I do think that Harbaugh's repeated flirtations with the NFL is a factor in this. So if you're Manuel, we're like, dude, I love having the results that you produce on the field. I think the sustainability could be even better if you recruited a little bit better here. Harbaugh's probably like, well, yeah, how about you give me some more NIL to play with and loosen those purse strings with that and stop being old, stodgy Michigan a little bit. They're doing that with the one more year fund, apparently, at least a little bit. We'll get to that in a second when we do our top winners and losers of the NFL draft deadline. If you're Manuel, it's got to be annoying to do this dance with a guy every single year, right? And that's kind of what this is. I fully expect Harbaugh to flirt with the NFL next year because I don't think he wants to coach college football. I think he wants to try to coach in the NFL.
I don't think he doesn't want to coach college football.
Okay, he would prefer to coach the NFL?
I
think he just wants to be in charge somewhere.
I think that he still desires winning at the highest level in the National Football League. In all of the like capital F football that comes with NFL brain. I think he still got it. And so I think he does. I think he can be satisfied and placated with his job at the University of Michigan, trying to win Big Ten championships and trying to contend for a college football playoff. I don't think he's running away from Michigan, but I do think we're going to go through this every single. We have a closer relationship with fans than we do with administrators here at the Cover 3 podcast. If I'm a Michigan fan, I think this is going to be exhausting. I think we're going to be doing this every single offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is just kind of part of the package of what you have to deal with. Because, I mean, let's be real. Like, Mike Gundy would flirt with other coaching jobs all the time, and he's always coming back to Oklahoma State. He was never flirting with NFL jobs. Jim Harbaugh can flirt with NFL jobs because there are NFL teams interested in him. Like, that's part of the deal. Like, if you have a chance to go to the NFL, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice if you don't at least consider the options that are available to you. And he clearly, he probably wants to win a Super Bowl as a coach. It's something he hasn't done. But I don't think that has anything to do with him not wanting to coach at the college level. I still think he wants to coach at the college level. But if the right NFL situation came along, he would leave Michigan for it. But I think it's got to be a specific situation for him to leave Michigan. I think he would rather just, like I was saying, I think the situation could be more along the lines of just him not being very happy with his boss. Maybe it stems from 2020. Maybe it stems from the salary reduction. I don't know, but it's just, that is the impression I get. This is not being told to me from anybody, just kind of reading the tea leaves on my own. I feel like there's something there that's not being discussed.
I totally can see that. Do you think that it's hard to say he overplayed his hand because he really has Michigan by the horns here, right? Like the level of production that he has given to Michigan has really not been matched, rarely if ever in our lifetimes. So this level of success at Michigan is awesome. Michigan kind of has to do whatever he wants now, given that he's won the Big Ten back-to-back years and made the playoff twice. I wonder, do you think he plays out his new contract at Michigan whenever he gets it? I mean, we haven't seen the length of it yet right now, but I mean, do you think he's coaching Michigan 2 years from now or 3 years from now? Or do you think eventually he'll take a lesser NFL job?
No, I don't think he's going to go back to the NFL just to be a head coach and have somebody give him players and tell him, here you go do what you want to do.
It's whatever owner has decided that you can be the coach, general manager, super everything sort of power.
Yeah, and there are really only a couple owners, I think, who would still consider that, and one of those has an opening right now and doesn't seem to be interested in doing it. So the other one, I feel like Mark Davis did it with John Gruden with the Raiders, so I feel like he would probably still consider doing it. Like, I know they hate Mike Mayock as the general manager, but I think we all know who the ultimate decision maker was in that situation. But that's not the model the NFL follows anymore. Like, that's just a very old school kind of approach to it. Whereas now it's like, I don't know. You've got your coach, and your coach works for the GM, and the GM works for the president, and all those guys will make all those decisions. It's more business than it used to be.
All right, if we're just judging Jim Harbaugh based on his college success, clearly 25 wins in the last 2 seasons, in the last 4 seasons that have been full schedule. So throw out 2020, 9 wins or more in every single year. In 3 out of the last 4 seasons that have been full schedules, he's gone 8-1 or better in Big Ten play. Is he a top 5 coach in college football, taking that on-field success, but also factoring in, I know Bud always likes to look at recruiting. Is he a top 5 coach in college football right now?
Yes. I don't really think it's much of a debate, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, all right. Kirby over him, Nick over him for sure.
Yeah.
In some order, right?
Mm-hmm.
Recency bias is Kirby. Obviously, other things is,
Oh, yeah, that's just going to be joy for May. When we get into the coach rankings in May, Kirby over Nick is just going to be fantastic.
Just wait until Harbaugh's over Day, because Ohio State fans been yelling at me for not putting Day in the top 5 the last few years, and I'm like, what has he won?
I'll do Harbaugh over Day.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying I'm anticipating what the response will be for that. But Harbaugh should be top 5. I mean, I feel like it's your top 4 are Nick, Kirby, Dabo. I still think because he's got the rings, and Harbaugh. I mean, who's your 5th right now?
So Lincoln was hot for a little bit. I think that you could put Harbaugh over Lincoln at this point.
Yeah, I think they're in very much the same tier. You could put Lincoln ahead of Harbaugh because he's been to the playoff more
times. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He's a top 5 coach in college football. He probably should be compensated like one. And, I don't like trying to count other people's pockets or trying to guess how much money matters to these guys. It's like, well, he doesn't need the money. That's not exactly the game always when it comes to these sorts of things. So Jim Harbaugh, it does look like he is, thanks to the support of the president and some statements from Harbaugh, looks like he's back for 2023. This NFL coaching carousel will not result in a job opening at Michigan football. However,
hey,
fast forward 2
one
weeks.
One thing I wanted to bring up here that I did not fully know. I heard this on one of the NFL broadcasts this weekend. Do you know like the top coaches in the NFL are making $20 million now? I didn't know that.
20.
One of the broadcasts said like the very best coaches in the NFL now are making $20 million, which is kind of shocked me. I was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize they were making that much. Now, not all of them. Like apparently some of these franchises
that is not true.
That is not true.
No, the highest paid NFL coach. Hold on, let me look at this list real quick. The highest paid NFL coaches in 2023. Now, I just Googled this, so it is reliable. It's from Wolfgang Sport. Oh, maybe it is that true. Hold on one second. Oh, screw it. Your ad blocker is on. Sean McVay makes between 15 and 18. Belichick's at 12.5. Pete Carroll's at 11. Shanahan's at 9.5. And the other Harbaugh is at 9.
Yeah, the floor I thought was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I did not know the ceiling had gotten to 20, but
it might here soon. I mean, I don't know. NFL money's just as stupid as college money at this point, really. So,
because they used to not make much more.
No,
like it used to be just Belichick, right? And maybe Sean Payton for a little while made a ton.
Sean Payton, I bet you're right. Sean Payton will probably get 20 wherever the hell he ends up. He's got every single team that is interviewing him right now. This is now becoming the Pick 6 podcast, but I think Sean Payton might crack the 20.
Were you saying that just in general for like what would motivate, like continual reasons why Harbaugh would be entertained by the opportunity to go to the NFL?
So for a long time, coaches had complained, hey, I'm going to go to the NFL. And I was like, well, good luck. I mean, your main skill is recruiting, and that's not really a valuable skill in the NFL. But their main reasons for going were you don't have to recruit and babysit all these kids and transfer portal. And there's more certainty, and you actually get to do more coaching and less just babysitting, for lack of a better term. But now I think one of the reasons could also be money, right? It may be that the NFL coaches are now being paid quite a bit more than college guys are at the very top. I mean, that's what's a top college guy make, 11 or 12? So,
yeah,
I mean, that's like 50% more at the very top.
Are Saban, Kirby, Dabo are all in the like 10 point something,
yeah.
I think at this point.
And then it's like, because the universities are kind of embarrassed to pay them more than that, they do some different stuff with deferred compensation. They do some stuff with life insurance policies that the school pays for. They do Like they'll buy your house and lease it back to you. That type of stuff, right? So it's different.
The other thing you got to consider, though, to be an NFL coach is, are you willing to punt on 4th and 2 at midfield and your team's already down 2 scores in a playoff game and your defense has given you no reason to believe it's going to stop the other team?
Was that Brandon Staley?
No, that was Todd
Bowles.
Bowles.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's pretty solid. Good punt.
Worked really well for him.
Yeah. How many plays did it take before Dallas returned to the point of the punt?
I think it was 2.
4. I think it was 4.
Okay.
I made a business decision after Brady's pick in the end zone, and then Dallas went the other way to score a touchdown. I was like, all right, early bedtime. Let's go.
All I'm going to say is I was on the over 45.5. That game had a red zone interception, Tom Brady's first in like 70 billion years, and 4 missed extra points, and finished 31-14. Just absolute nightmare of a game for me.
45 on the nose.
One NFL bet this weekend. Bengals, Jags, teaser. That was had it the whole way, obviously, right?
The entire way. Oh my gosh. All right. So I feel like we need to mention this just in case there are questions in the audience. But right now we've got Michigan co-offensive coordinator Danny Cannell jumping in. How teeth?
Danny, can you feel your mouth?
I can.
Okay.
I might not be able to the next time, though. That's the bad news. That's what
I'm just happy you win. I'm happy you put on your big boy pants and you went to the dentist.
Once every 5 years, when I start getting a little pain, had it crop up in Los Angeles, started to go to sleep. I'm like, oh, there's a throbbing in my mouth. So, yeah, we got some issues going on. Anyway.
Did you get a sticker?
not even, or a lollipop, and a good sugar-free lollipop.
Dentists do not give lollipops.
Yeah,
or they want you coming back.
Yeah.
Michigan co-offensive coordinator Matt Weiss has been placed on leave as he is being investigated for, quote, report of computer access crimes that occurred in December at the team's football facility. What? Do we have anything like?
I could read from the story. If you want.
I mean, because here's the one thread that I've seen. If for some reason this leads to Matt Weiss losing his job, does that mean Harbaugh takes over more offensive coordinator responsibilities, offensive coordinator roles? Do you end up promoting Mike Hart into the position? What is the staff shakeup on a team that has led to a lot of staff shakeup? What does that mean for Michigan moving forward? Because frankly, I have taken the approach of the Michigan offense, even with all of the changeover in staff, still has so much Harbaugh influence that it's hard for me to say that the loss of this person is going to end up greatly changing my expectations, especially, and we'll talk about Michigan a little bit later, Blake Corum's coming back. Donovan Edwards is going to be on this roster. This team is still going to run the daggum football and try to overwhelm opponents at the line of scrimmage and at the point of attack. But, what?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's like I'm reading the story because I'm trying to figure out okay, but it's like Michigan state law prohibits access to computers, computer systems, and computer networks for certain fraudulent purposes, as well as intentional and unauthorized access, alteration, damage, and destruction of computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer software programs, and data. It also prohibits the sending of certain electronic messages. I don't know.
Directly from the statute in Michigan, a person shall not use a computer program, computer system, or computer network to commit, attempt to commit, conspire to commit, or solicit another person to commit a crime. So there's that. Little more to it there. There's such a wide variety.
Do we want to speculate what the crime was?
No, because I think there's some ways you can go down this that, like, if you speculate and you're wrong, it's no. I don't want to speculate on it.
I do think that the fine print of using a university computer is probably a lot stricter than a lot of people would think.
But they also searched his home.
But raids,
according to the Detroit News. 2 sources, they said. Also, can we talk about real estate costs in Ann Arbor? This guy's home went for $1.52 million in May.
Oh, it's nuts.
3,300 square feet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like before we moved, we were considering moving somewhere like Ann Arbor and looking at the house prices there. It was just like, holy, I mean, we live in Chicago, so it's not like it was cheap here, but we were very surprised by housing prices in Ann Arbor.
How much? $450 a square foot?
Yeah.
I like that angle. I have no idea what's happening right? I mean, this is one of those weird ones where it just comes out of nowhere and you're like, what is happening here? Ultimately, I think, Chip, you said it best. Jim Harbaugh's, I mean, really, it goes back to when they started getting good again, right? When he started taking over, more physical mentality. We're going to run the ball, be a run first. I think it's been more about his influence on this offense than anything. Are you concerned? Yeah. I mean, you don't want your staff to, you don't want police investigations coming around, circling around your staff. I mean,
and we've got NCAA investigations. And I mean, it's like everything is like fine, I guess, because Harbaugh's back, but I can't say that it's been the smoothest a couple of weeks since the loss to TCU in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, I really don't know what this is. Reading the Michigan 24/7 Sports message boards, they don't really seem to be all that bummed if Weiss does leave.
Sharon Moore would be the other piece of this. Was like, oh, is Sharon Moore still there? All right, cool.
Yeah, and I don't think those guys are equals, even though their titles say co. Right, Sharon Moore is the dude who other schools will be trying to hire away as a head coach in the coming years. I don't really get the same vibe with Matt Weiss.
Pivoting over to the ongoing Jaden Rashada saga, the Rashada saga. We've got reporting coming out. Brandon Huffman comes out, says per a source close to the recruitment on Tuesday afternoon, Jaden Rashada officially filed a request for a release from his national letter of intent with Florida. We've had a lot of information that has continued to come out of this, but still the prediction that was on the Cover 3 podcast on Thursday that Jaden Rashada would not be playing for the Florida Gators certainly appears to be the case. We did not have a resolution in time for his enrollment for the spring semester, which means we're going to be delayed for his enrollment wherever he goes. And so this opens up a couple of interesting questions. Number one, if this does have to do with an NIL package that was promised but not delivered upon, what does that tell us about where we are in terms of the current NIL era? What does this mean in terms of Florida and its operations, both in the present in terms of trying to get recruits, but also in the future? And then also Jaden Rashada, where does he end up? So before we get to the Jaden Rashada, where does he end up? But I'm going to let you take first swing at this. Do you think that this was, in fact, a $13 million package that was promised but not delivered, and that was sort of the beginning of the breakdown between Florida and Rashada?
I do. So Orlando Sentinel reported it was $13 million. The Athletics reported it was $13 million. I have not seen the contract. My guess here, I think you could call it like informed speculation, is that it was probably worth up to $13 million. I would be shocked if it was a guaranteed $13 million, but that's probably the max value of if everything works out, mutual option type stuff, I would guess, based on how these are written over 4 or 5 years type thing. Just clarify if you guys are listening for the first time, this was not $13 million per year, $13 million over basically a kid's career. That's clearly the reason for the breakdown here. Now, a couple questions I would have is, how in the hell did you get to a $13 million valuation for Rashada, who's like a top 50 player, on a composite, a good player, but he's a dude who's kind of a known commodity. He's going to turn 20 in August. He's not like a 17-year-old who's going to continue to grow a whole lot more, although he'll grow some. And he's it's a good arm. He's a good player. But if the reporting on Nico is correct at Tennessee and the Vols got him for $8 million, the idea that Rashada is getting 50% more is just crazy to me. So on the one hand, from a cost-saving standpoint, you could say that Florida probably got off good here in that they did not sink $13 million into this kid. On the other hand, it raises major questions of, okay, how about what are other kids going to view Florida as? Do other recruits think Florida is broke as far as the ability to pay NIL? Is that going to hurt Billy Napier and their staff on the trail? How did you get to that valuation anyway? Was it really as simple as Florida's big money folks were pissed that Miami was stealing all their kids? And you're like, well, watch this. We're going to strike back. And then it's like, wait, what? What did we offer to strike back? There's a lot of questions you have to ask here. I do think $13 million would have been an overpay. The way that they got out of the deal is definitely kind of embarrassing and will probably reverberate throughout the recruiting industry.
That's, I think, the most interesting thing about this. I mean, it's a rough look for the Gators. And, if we hear about negative recruiting all the time, what do you think every other program and every other collective is telling anybody that they're competing with for the University of Florida? Like, good luck getting your money. I mean, I can hear them saying that. The other thing too, and this is the whole newness of this environment, we have no idea what the structure of these deals are. Like, is there a chance it could be, 1.5 the first year, 2.5 the next, 3.5, and then there's like a balloon in the fourth because you're like, he's going to be turning pro. Like, you don't know what the exact numbers of these are, and until we do, I think there's a lot of speculation. And like, that's why I believe the 13, but I kind of don't believe the 13, like in actuality. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's got to be some funny money in there, just like there are when you read an NFL contract and, don't look for the total, look for the guaranteed money. I would have to think that some of these deals have similar language and similar setups, but I could be wrong.
If you win 2 national championships,
right.
like
could be a huge bonus.
Signing bonuses in there. That's how you could get to.
So he gets 1, 1, and 1, and then 10 if he gets a national title.
I would not structure it that way, though. Just be clarified. I wouldn't go 1, 1, 1, 10 because then the kid might suck and he might sit around for 4 years and be like, well,
wait for the 10.
Senior year.
You'd have to mutual option it.
Tim Tebow got 2 national championships.
True, yeah.
Those.
So is it possible, and I saw this suggested by Andy Staples. Shout out to Andy. He's a huge fan of the show. I saw it Andy suggested, what if this didn't come from the Gator Collective? Like, this is one of the there are universities that have multiple collectives. It is not necessarily like one unified collective. Like, it's possible that whoever put this together was acting like a little bit of is going rogue just a little bit. I mean, his commitment to Florida initially was a stunner. We had, peel back the curtain. When we are given information or in strongly informed predictions that a player who is supposed to announce their commitment, we think we know what it's going to do. We do a little bit of legwork in advance. We put together some words so that we can be able to provide as much analysis as fast as possible for you. And for everybody that was putting together the content, this was going to be an announcement that Jaden Rashada was going to Miami. And it was just 100% rogue, out of nowhere. He's going to Florida. And I think even the announcement wasn't made when the announcement was supposed to be made. And all of that being off schedule, when I was thinking back to his initial commitment in October, I was like, that would make sense that somebody just came in rogue with a wild promise. To your point, Bud, was getting mad about Florida losing some of these battles and just like fired on something they couldn't back up without checking with whoever's in charge of the finances of the Gator Collective. And then all of a sudden you're put in this tight position. I think it's very possible that this is an example of what has happened in the current NIL era, where there can be so many different actors who can work with third parties and somebody in a recruit's camp to try to put together a package that might not check out with everybody who's in charge of the more functional and structured collective that is working with the university.
This is kind of the natural consequence, and we said this on Thursday's show, of you are employing people, except you're not employing them because they're not employees and you're not paying them. But the guys that make the product go have a ton of market value. It's obvious when you have a lot of kids making over $1 million now per year, but you're not paying them. So you're really relying as a school on a third party to run your payroll. And like, we know there are schools out there that freaking hate their collectives and the guys that run them. They're like, I hate this guy. Right. And they don't want to deal with them, but it's a necessary evil, especially in the States where, like Florida, where the school cannot have much involvement with the collective. Now, I think there are other schools in the state that love the guys that run their collective, right? So it just depends. Or Florida, I guess we'll see if they reorg that thing, if they try to bring it all under one umbrella. I know they had Gator Collective, they had the Gator Guard. But I mean, if you're repping a kid and he signs with Florida now, do you want some more evidence up front that you're going to get your money?
Cash on delivery, please.
Or do you think his reps should have said, wait a second, 13 million is so just not beyond the pale, but so like unheard of in this market that should red flags have gone up then on his side and said, wait a second, $13 million.
Well, have you guys seen the Athletic timeline report where they said that December 7th that this Gator collective, Eddie Rojas, sent a letter of termination for the $13 million deal? Now that's in dispute, I guess. But then if you're Rashada, aren't you saying, whoa, like, wait a second, you're backing on the deal? So, I mean, all it makes sense when you start thinking about it from that perspective.
I think this kid wanted to play for Florida. It just obviously, like, there's major trust issues there now.
And we do have.
That's where, can I just say something real quick? Like you just said, he wanted to play for Florida. Did he want to go because he believes in Billy Napier, can develop as a quarterback because they're going to put him in a position to succeed? Or did he go because of the $13 million? And I'm sure, and that's where I think, if you were talking to high school kids and you were an advisor and a real advisor, not somebody that's going to take 20% of the 13 mil, but like somebody who's advising him as a future, I would say, man, you got to prioritize what you're looking at. Yes, you want to get paid because there's a going rate, but that cannot be the only reason why you're selecting somebody. You've got to make sure you're comfortable with the staff, with the surroundings, with the school, with the team, with the culture, all of it. And then you find out okay, all right. And then you narrow your choices down to these 3 to 5 schools. And so if a team offers you 13, another offers you 10, maybe it's best to go to the place that goes 10. That's why I would just be careful of going to the highest bidder, because as we're seeing, and this might be the perfect example, the highest bidder may not even be real. So make sure you got something good as well. And I don't know what I'd tell him now. I don't know what advice I'd give him now, but I just think you got to be really careful making these decisions. And it's hard. Think about it. 17, 18-year-old, you're getting, people are in your pocket trying to take fees. I mean, it's really complicated. And I feel bad for some of these kids because then they get criticized, for, choosing a place, and it's hard.
Where do we think Jaden Rashada ends up?
I would say either the West Coast, maybe a
He's
Washington.
from California, which is, again, hilarious about this Miami-Florida battle. It's it's from California.
Washington, Arizona State, maybe somewhere like that potentially, or alternatively, perhaps somewhere like an SMU, right? SMU has money to spend. They just lost Mordecai to Wisconsin, so maybe they have some stuff left over. I know he has some connections to SMU. I could see them, and that would be a big get for their staff.
Hey, maybe he ends up at Wisconsin. They haven't gotten enough quarterbacks.
DJ Lagway, 5-star quarterback, is on board for the 2024 cycle. Is he a strong enough prospect to be able to placate whatever frustrations are out there with a Graham Mertz, Jack Miller quarterback battle ongoing for the Florida starting quarterback job in 2023?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lagway's a really good player.
If I'm a Florida fan and I know Lagway's coming, this stinks. But at the same time, you're okay, we got to get to Lagway's arrival, and then this thing can really take off.
It's also are you going to get Lagway?
You think that after he committed, he could flip? He still hasn't put pen to paper. So
we got what, a whole year before signing day? What are your Tom? Have you run your stuff for next year yet?
No.
My very early stuff has Florida at 5.75 wins. I think in order to actually keep DJ Lagway, if I'm just reading tea leaves here, Florida needs to overachieve this year.
Wow.
Or it needs to take that $13 million they didn't give Rashada, and pull it up and give it to Lagway.
Look, ask Mike Norvell how hard it is to recruit after 2 losing seasons in a row to start your tenure. Because that's kind of what Napier is facing. If they don't overachieve a little bit.
Gonna be very, very interesting to keep tabs on that. One more from the 2023 cycle. Cormani McClain visited Colorado over the weekend. Is the Miami commit who did not sign in the early signing period and now will officially put pen to paper in February, a couple weeks from now. You think, is Colorado now the front runner for Cormani McClain?
I think Colorado has to be considered the front runner, right? He was committed to Miami, shocked the world because everybody thought he was going to Florida, and he pulled the shocker there and committed to Miami. One of the commits, by the way, I think that really pissed Florida off, and maybe got him going like that. Miami's entire staff went up to Lakeland High to go see Cormani, and he wasn't there. So it turns out he was actually on a flight out to visit Boulder and Dion. My guess here, if you're Miami, you still want the kid, but you got to be really frustrated with a guy who's verbally, quote unquote, committed to you in a bunch of videos, taking a bunch of pics that look like they could be used for a commitment thing, graphics and whatnot, which kids do on all visits, by the way. So I shouldn't say that's totally, out of the norm. But I mean, don't you kind of think, didn't Miami have to check to see if he was there and then he wasn't there? Like, do you just drive up unannounced to see the kid? I don't know. I think Colorado's got to be considered the front runner.
Why would a top-ranked cornerback want to go play for Deion Sanders?
I know, right?
What can Deion possibly teach him? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's something different when the best cornerbacks of all time is like, hey, let's go.
Did you see the video though? Oh, Danny saw it.
Oh, I saw it. That's my guy, Tim Brewster. He was the tight ends coach in the Broncos my last year there. He was with Florida State. He's a mag. He's been around a long time. And it wasn't so much to rip on Tim Brewster. And it was funny because I'm getting a small taste of what it's like to talk about anything Colorado. Like, there are a bunch of Colorado fans like, oh, what do you mean? This team needs that. Like, well, what are you saying? Oh, this, like pointing out that he wasn't that good of a coach as a head. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, all I wanted to say was that this stuff doesn't fly in the NFL. No. And like, I think Urban Meyer tried that crap. I think maybe not to that extent, but it's very militaristic. Like, and like I experienced it at Florida State. I mean, we had mat drills where they were like drill sergeants and we were just grunts, and they went out and they mentally abused us and tore us down. And then they built us back up. There is a method to it. Discipline is very real. And I'm okay with Tim Brewster doing it. I was just pointing out that if you ever wonder, and I think Matt Rule was kind of one of those that had the rah mentality, like, hey, everyone's going to follow me and I'm going to lead. In the NFL, guys are just like, show me, when's my paycheck coming? Tell me what I need to do, and I'm going to go do it. Like, you don't have to sit in a room. And I just thought it was interesting how polarizing that video was.
Yeah, you mentioned like college, it's more militaristic. Even in the military, once you've been in a few years, they're no longer doing that to you. You kind of already know your job. In the NFL and college, it's the same way. You don't need the drill sergeant coming in to fire you up anymore.
Shout out to Coach Brew.
Yeah.
Just out there getting it done. One last thing.
I just like how he really wanted him to say, we coming. Like he was trying to incorporate the we coming from the opener, from Dion. I thought that was pretty funny. Because I don't know if Brewster's a guy I pictured, out there saying we coming. I didn't see that coming from him. But hey, got to fall in line. It all flows down from the top.
So one last thing before we get to NFL draft declaration, sort of winners and losers from the deadline. Dabo Swinney quickly moved Brendan Streeter out. And then he did something that he hasn't done since back 2011, 2012. Been almost a decade since that man went out and got one of the hottest names on the market. Now, we are bringing new ideas into this Clemson football program, and the hire of Garrett Riley, the TCU offensive coordinator, has now created a very new look for the Clemson Tigers going into 2023. Again, like I said at the top of the show, we have looked at the Clemson staff and said, how much experience do your guys have outside of Clemson? How many new ideas are you bringing into this building? So now that Dabo has done it, are we turning around? Are we going to start partying like it's 2011 again, 2012? Is this when the torch is passed? Is this the reboot button? Will this hire be the beginning of a Clemson program being able to take a little bit of a dip and then maybe be able to reclaim its undisputed position atop the ACC and as a college football playoff contender?
If I am a Clemson fan, I am far more optimistic right now than I was a week or two ago. Yes, because this is like Garrett Riley is not a guarantee that Clemson's going to win a national title or get to the playoff next year. It's probably still going to win the ACC or at least compete for it. But you've finally listened to the criticism and you finally have seen it for yourself and realized, okay, this just isn't working anymore. We need to do something. If this offense could get freaking TCU to the college football playoff, what could it do for us with the talent we have at QB, some of the talent we've recruited on offense that we just, frankly, have wasted? A lot of the guys that Clemson has had at receiver have been talented guys out of high school that did not develop into anything. And part of it might have been coaching, but most of it was probably just an offense that really didn't take advantage of what they could do. Now you have a guy who has shown, and he's got an offense. Like, how many bad receivers have you seen a Riley offense have? You know what I mean? Like, at Oklahoma, at USC, and then his offense at TCU. Some guys that might not have been super highly rated athletes coming out of high school are putting up numbers in this offense. Quarterbacks are putting up numbers in this offense because it actually schemes these guys open. There's an actual plan behind it. Whereas when I'm watching Clemson's offense, I sometimes really struggle to figure out what the goal is on a certain play. Like, what were they trying to do here? So if I'm Clemson, I'm very optimistic.
Tom, those plays worked for a long time. Those plays work. Just keep calling them. Just keep calling those plays that work. We need to execute better. Yeah. Our offense needs to do better. Our offensive line, our quarterbacks got to make better. That to me felt like what you were watching is when you feel like some people think calling plays is like playing Madden. You know, you just call the plays and you make it work. And it really is it's an art form to being not only a play caller, but being a designer of an offense. And you could tell that for the past, since Chad Morris left, like these were not the designers of the offense. They were running that offense and trying to make tweaks, and it wasn't working. There was no innovation or no evolution to what they had been doing for the last 10 years. So I think you got to be super pumped for this change. And they're ecstatic, as they should be. I think it's just I think this is a good move for Dabo. He gets criticized all the time. For him to be able to take a little bit of time to self-evaluate, to go back, look at the tape, to talk to some people. You know, I'm sure he did not make this decision alone. Say, all right, what's the issue here? What's happening? And being able to go out and get the best available guy in the market, that to me is probably the most, like, not only did he didn't just make a change, he went out and got the best available option, which Texas A&M wanted a best available option. They couldn't get him, you know, which I think is probably more personality driven and control. But this is a massive move for Clemson and Dabo.
I think it also creates a sense of consequences within that Clemson program. This might be all family and this might be like all, you know, lovey-dovey and build each other up. But if you don't get results, then there will be consequences. And everything was set up for Brandon Streeter to be able to succeed and thrive and be the next Clemson offensive coordinator to go and get a head coaching job. Like, he'd been sort of come up through the ranks. He was going to follow in the lines of a Jeff Scott and Tony Elliott and be really successful. And we were just going to look at this amazing coaching tree. And when it doesn't work out, you're out, you're terminated. And I think that's got to like reverberate through the entire Clemson program, that, you know, just because you're here and it's all family doesn't mean that we don't demand results, and there will be consequences if those results aren't met. And so being willing to move on from Streeter and also go get Garrett Riley shows me a sense of urgency, because Dabo really scared me heading into last year. He's like, everybody thinks that, you know, we deserve, or like he was talking about expectations and how unrealistic it was to expect that Clemson was going to be playing for a national championship every year, how unrealistic it was for fans to expect they were going to be winning the ACC every year. And you kind of do have to set those as the expectations. If you really want to be able to chase the best programs in the country, you're not going to meet them. That is true. But to at least create the idea that just being good isn't good enough if the results aren't there. I think it's an interesting turning point, certainly, for the Clemson football program as we continue to move forward in an ACC that won't have divisions and on the precipice of an expanded college football playoff, where Clemson, if it continues to operate at a high level, is going to be one of those programs that we pick to be in that playoff almost every single year. So you've got to be able to level up in a way that your Cheez-It Bowl team is not going to get bounced in the first round.
So I think this is kind of step 1 of 3. We said that the old Dabo would have gone out and got a killer at offensive coordinator like he did with Chad Morris, not promoted internally. So I like the hire from that standpoint. We criticized the whole Clemson offensive staff for its lack of experience. Is Lincoln Riley allowed to make changes and bring his own guys in there, or does he have to work with this group?
Garrett, you mean?
Garrett Riley.
Excuse me, Garrett Riley. Yeah, is Garrett going to be able to make changes here, or does he have to work with all these guys who still have no experience outside of Clemson at the Power 5 level? That's a question I would ask. Also, I scroll down and I see, what has Clemson done in the transfer portal? Nothing. They took Paul Tyson from Arizona State, who will be a backup quarterback. Couldn't get on the field at Bama, couldn't get on the field at a dreadful Arizona State team last year. Like, he's more of a dude I would expect to be, like a GA at some point, right?
That's Bear Bryant's grandson.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Dabo's got the Bama connects.
Dabo taking Bear Bryant's grandson to just come be a high character guy. That's the Dabo I know and love.
Like, Georgia doesn't use the portal much, but Georgia's recruiting has been insane. And Clemson has recruited really well, but you can't tell me their hit rate is the same as what Georgia's has been recently. So I want to see, does Dabo, does he go all the way? Does he take the next steps? Because if Clemson wants to get back, they do need to supplement a little bit more, I think, with the portal. And I want to see if Garrett Riley can hire the staff that he wants to hire, assuming he doesn't want to just work with the existing staff that put that offense together the last 2 years.
Mm. The good news is for Garrett Riley, too, is there won't be much of an adjustment period because he's already coming from a small Christian school.
I seen somebody put out here, somebody in these streets. I apologize, I can't give you credit right now, but I seen somebody in the streets put the ISO cam of Dabo running down the hill, full speed. And they said Dabo when he found out what the C in TCU stands for. Oh man, too much. All right, coming up on the other side, the NFL draft early entry deadline has passed. Got 72 hours if anybody wants to rethink their decision. But for the most part, our list is set. Who are the big winners, losers, surprises, and more next.
You're seeing Allison, too. I got a feeling the answers are in Beacon Hills.
Can you feel it?
She's alive?
How do we know she's really Allison? There's more going on, and I think it's all connected.
The game is mine.
I'm still standing! I'm still the alpha!
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, and just right off the rip, why? Just one question. Who do you think you are? Why did we consider that CJ Stroud was going to come back to Ohio State? What was that about?
We didn't.
Yeah, I don't think we really did.
Okay.
It was fun to speculate. What's the number? Yeah.
No, actually, it wasn't fun for me because, again, another peek behind the curtain. I was on news duty on Sunday, right? And about 5 p.m., getting ready to sit down for dinner Sunday night, an editor comes popping into the Slack and says, "Hey, there are rumors that CJ Stroud's going to be coming back. Maybe we should get something worked up just in case." And I was like, he's not coming back, but I'm not the one in charge. So had my dinner ruined. I had to go write a post about CJ Stroud returning to Ohio State. So there, this was not a victimless crime.
So the social media buzz was basically one of their big boosters teasing a gender reveal.
Yeah, he said big news coming tomorrow.
Oh, that was annoying.
Big news was a gender reveal that CJ Stroud was involved in. I'll at least say that,
and it's big news for them.
It was big
Not
news
for us.
them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
not for us at all.
So what were some of the biggest, either a player that decided to go that was a surprise or feels very significant, or the announcement of somebody that was going to come back? What were some of the sort of teams or players that really stood out in terms of the deadline coming and going and the impact on the 2023 season?
I think Penn State's one we need to look at, right? They kept Olu Fashanu, they kept Adisa Isaac, they kept Curtis Jacobs. I mean, those are three guys.
Porter Washington, they lose Joey Porter Jr.
Yeah, and they've done really nice work in the transfer portal. They got Dante Cephas, they got Malik McClain to replace some of those guys at receiver. I know we'll do a portal episode probably coming up, but I thought Penn State was. I had 5 winners of teams that I thought on balance what they kept versus what they could have lost was clearly in their favor. And Penn State, for me, is a major winner there as they try to win the Big Ten.
Michigan getting Blake Corum back.
Yeah.
And like,
I
I understand the injury is going to play like a big role in that, and that his NFL draft stock was impacted by his recovery time, getting an injury that late in the season, but he still could have gone pro, still would have been drafted at some point. But the idea that you've got that 1-2 punch of Corum and Donovan Edwards, with JJ McCarthy, that offensive backfield is absolutely tremendous and will be a huge part of, that's so much fun. That Penn State's a big winner. Michigan's a big winner. Ohio State is Ohio State. That Big Ten race is going to be one of the biggest stories in all of college football next season.
Well, what's going to be interesting, you gave the 3, which, that was the criticism this past year, was a 3-team league. I think it'll be more interesting to see like who emerges outside of those 3. Do we see another Illinois emerge? What does Wisconsin do with, new head coach? Like, what does Minnesota do with, like, I think that's going to be more intriguing because I think we know what those schools are going to be. Like, who's going to emerge to challenge those 3?
Well, I don't think they'd count as one of the big winners, but I will say Illinois is a winner from players returning this year because they're going to lose Witherspoon. They're losing Sidney Brown. They're losing Chase Brown. But a lot of the big key players in that defense who could have gone to the draft have come back. Some offensive linemen who could have gone to the draft are coming back. So I feel like Illinois is probably still going to be pretty decent next year. I don't know if they're going to be anywhere near the level of Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, but I do think they're a winner. I think outside the Big Ten, though, like, who in the SEC do you think had the worst, and who do you think had the best?
The worst, I think, is Florida.
Yeah.
You lose the huge guard. You lose Richardson. I'm not trying to bag on Florida today, but, like, to me, they lost compared to the level of talent on that team. A lot of Florida's best players are going pro early.
What about the best?
I didn't have an SEC best.
Yeah, see, I was struggling to find one. That's what, cause like when I was going through them, I was like, all right, I feel like it's so weird with the SEC because there's always the players that are going to be drafted are typically leaving, but the way they recruit, it's like most of them, they'll probably be replaced. They'll probably be the same team they were last year. So it's hard to find like a team in the SEC that you could say, oh wow, they got super lucky that guy's coming back.
I'd agree with that. Staying in the state of Florida State kept Jared Verse. That's pretty big. I don't think he was a guaranteed first rounder, but I don't think he's getting out of the second round. They kept Jordan Travis, who would have been a late round selection, I think, but he's a really excellent college quarterback. And that's, Florida State plays college football, so that's what they care about. And then they also kept Fabian Lovett, who's their best interior defensive lineman. Probably didn't get the draft grade he wanted. I think he elects to come back. Maybe he can get to be a third rounder or a second rounder. I think he would have been a late round selection. Those are 3 guys who would no doubt have been drafted and, maybe decently high, especially with Verse. Those 3 coming back are putting FSU in the winning category for me.
And no one would have been surprised if they would have left. I think the surprise was them coming back, which is what you would categorize for winners.
Yeah,
no doubt.
I think you have to consider the Pac-12 teams to be winners too.
Yes.
Oregon, Utah. They're all getting their quarterbacks back. They're all keeping a lot of key players. So I feel like that's something like we kind of talked about this a little last week too, before everything was official. It's just like the Pac-12 next year is just with all the quarterbacks that they have returning and then Caleb Williams having to come back, like that could be fun. One team I think might be hurt, like Zach Charbonnet going to the NFL. I realize running backs are a lot easier to replace than most other positions, but I felt like Zach Charbonnet was just a very big part for what UCLA was doing offensively, and I thought he was a very good player in that offense. That could be something that kind of hurts. They're already losing DTR. It's going to be interesting to see what that UCLA offense looks like. So I wouldn't qualify the Bruins as a loser, but it hurts.
I honestly almost put them in the winning category, which is I'm glad I didn't, because I think I agree with Tom. But Charbonnet is a guy I think we all expected to go pro because he is a running back. Running backs, like Corum doesn't come back if he doesn't bust his leg up, right? There's no way. UCLA kept Latu, who I think is potentially going to be a major pass rusher for them. Bobo's gone, DTR is gone. Although he played pretty poorly down the stretch. Charbonnet's gone. The Murphy twins are gone. I think I agree with Tom, but they didn't lose everybody they could have. And I think Latu is like a potential difference maker.
And this is, like trying to get your players to stay and not enter the portal is one thing. This, like, trying to get them to go not go to the NFL is certainly a little bit of a different challenge altogether. Texas A&M lost a lot to the portal, right?
Yeah.
But we've detailed how some of those players, you go back and you look at how they fit into the overall Texas A&M landscape, that maybe their exits might not be the biggest surprise. I'll add specifically to the Washington front. You've got a 1,000-yard wide receiver and one of your top defensive linemen back, in addition to Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm.
That Huskies team is going to be for real going into next year.
Yeah, I was surprised that Dunze returned, but
Yeah.
Because McMillan went, right? Or was he a senior?
McMillan's back,
no, yeah,
isn't he?
Oh, my goodness.
I think so. Hold on.
He's
Fill
not on my
time,
list.
fill
If I'm
time.
gone.
TCU lost a ton.
TCU lost everything for the most part.
As far as early guys, they lost what? Johnson and Miller.
Yeah, Kendre Miller and Quentin Johnston. You throw in Garrett Riley on top of it. That's again, I've said before, I will put a high floor on TCU predictions going into 2023, but that high floor is going to be entirely like infrastructure. No, or like, I don't know how to say it, but like the secret sauce or whatever it is. I'm just not going to be betting against them. But they've got a lot to do.
I would
McMillan
say-
is back, by the way.
Jeez, Dunze and McMillan and Michael Penix.
Mhm.
No.
I think Pitt might have to be a loser here, right? So you lose Abaconda early, which is not surprising. You lose Brandon Hill, one of their better corners early. You lose
Kansas was
Kalijah.
a senior, right?
Cansey was definitely listed on CBS as an early guy. So
He's an early guy.
he might have been a senior, but had an extra year to go.
Mhm.
And then also Baldonado, I think turned pro, right? Did I see that? I had him on my list, and now he's on the CBS list. So I'm curious if he was maybe
don't know.
not an early guy. Did he? I don't know. Anyway, I had them as a loser on my list. Ohio State, just because they also lost center Luke Weipler.
Right.
I thought he was
You
an
lose both
unexpected
starting
guy.
tackles and your starting center, and we're going to be transitioning to the Kyle McCord era.
Stroud,
yeah.
Obviously expected.
Tommy Eichenberg is back though.
There you
Hooray!
Yeah, Baldonado's going to the draft.
Okay. Cuse is a sneaky one, by the way. So Sean Tucker, early expected. Bergeron, one of their best offensive linemen. And then also Garrett Williams, who I thought maybe could have come back after busting his knee up. Was it knee or foot? I thought it was knee. He comes back. They also lost a ton to the portal, which just for this exercise, we're talking draft. But to lose 3 guys early off Cuse, I think that hurts a decent bit.
Yeah, I mean, you lose Bergeron, you lose 16 goals, 19 assists in 43 games. I mean, that's really tough. Puck talk.
We got our puck head over here. I always forget Chip's the biggest hockey fan on this show. He's Chippy Pucks.
Northwestern did
Pucks
lose
Patterson.
Skronsky.
Yeah,
that was kind of always known.
Yeah.
You're Northwestern losing its stud offensive tackle that was so important to the success. Look at all the wins from the year.
Can't wait. Northwestern fans are going to think I hate Northwestern when I start doing mock drafts. I'll leave it at that.
Why? Because you're not going to have him as your first tackle?
Yeah, I won't. I think he's good.
You can have Broderick Jones?
I don't 100% know yet. I will just say I don't think the offensive line draft class is very good this year overall. So Skronsky might end up being the number 1 lineman in my mocks. I don't think it's a great class overall.
I thought, was it last year's tackle class that had like Andrew Thomas and all those guys in there?
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a good tackle class.
Last year's class was very good. This year's, I don't think it. I mean, I've been wrong plenty of times before, but there's nothing in this one that makes me just like, oh yeah, surefire guy right there. Whereas last year there were like 3 or 4 guys. I was like, I would take him. Hell yeah, top 10 for sure.
So what position is the most stacked right now? Have you gotten to that point?
I feel like there's a lot of good defensive backs.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a defensive heavy draft, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even started to look at it because thankfully I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm
Get
just
to-
kind of starting the process the last couple days.
Get to rely on Tom for that. Kenny's fantastic. And he will, as he said, be doing mock drafts for CBSSports.com here over the next couple months. And yeah, we're going to dig into it here because Tom's an expert and we know these guys in college. Those NFL writers have not seen anything. Ryan Wilson has. But in general, the NFL population. They don't know these guys like we do, so we'll continue to offer our expertise there. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. We'll be back Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Much more to get to from across college football, and we'll dive into the big old bag of mail. We've asked, you've answered. You ask, we answer. You leave us a 5-star review. Put your question in that review. We will tackle it in a future mailbag episode. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See y'all.